Probably nothing. Jessica's voice was contemptuous. That lady obviously is as crazy as a loon. Is she an aunt of yours or something, Kelly? Cut it out, Jess. Lisa is not a relative, said Katelyn in an unexpectedly sharp tone. I felt a pang of joy at the fact that Katelyn had defended me. But then I realized that it wasn't me she was thinking of. A relative of mine would obviously be also a relative of hers. Maybe Jessica had forgotten that little fact in her eagerness to taunt me. Jessica looked confused for a moment, until she finally figured out that she had put her foot in her mouth. But then she continued, unchanged. That nutcase is probably seeing things and managed to scare her poor dog out of his mind. She ought to go to a shrink before she loses it completely. Everyone knows that animals are affected by their owner's moods. Katelyn nodded in agreement. The offense she'd taken a moment ago was clearly forgotten already. That's right. A nervous rider will also make the horse nervous. You probably know all about that, Kelly. I didn't answer, but felt a well-known sting in my heart from Katelyn's hurtful remark. Then I glanced over at Erica. She rolled her eyes and made a head toss in Katelyn's direction, while she silently mouthed the word, moron. My sister must have seen it because her face turned red, and she looked away. Encouraged by the fact that Erica was so easily able to knock Katelyn off her perch, I decided to learn from her. I wasn't a little kid anymore. It was time I showed Katelyn that she and Jessica couldn't just kick me around any way they wanted to. From now on, I would merely roll my eyes and shrug my shoulders contemptuously whenever they said something sarcastic or unkind to me. Yes, sirree, that's what I would do. Right then I felt very strong and optimistic. I should have known better. The forest was peaceful as darkness descended on the treetops. A lark flew along with soft strokes of its wings. It was headed for the biggest tree in the grove. The bird landed on a branch for a little brush-up of its wings, but never made it that far. All it managed was a stifled chirp before it fell to the ground, where it remained, motionless. The bullies strike again. When Erica showed up the next morning, I was standing in the stable hallway brushing Happy, my hands shaking. "Hi," she said, "and I thought I was early today. But apparently you beat me by several horse lengths. Are you going for a ride?" I just shrugged my shoulders without looking at her. A big lump of restrained sobs stuck in my throat and made it impossible for me to talk. "Is something wrong?" I nodded, still saying nothing. What happened? I mean, did something happen with that lady, Lisa? This time I shook my head. I wished Erica would go away and leave me alone. But Erica didn't go. "Katelyn," she said, and this time it was no question. "What did she do this time?" "Oh, only stomped on me and made me feel like dirt," I said. I decided to be totally indifferent and not pay any attention to her, but she and Jessica always know exactly how to get under my skin. I pictured the scene at the breakfast table and felt two big tears escape the corner of my eyes and roll down my cheeks. I wiped them away irritably. All that was missing now was for the two bosom buddies to show up and see me crying. I didn't want to give them that satisfaction. "Are you sure you want that yogurt?" Jessica had asked me when she and Katelyn came down to the kitchen. Jessica had slept over again, as she had done all too often lately. It was bad enough having to run into her at the stable and at school, without having her invade my home as well. I felt my stomach tighten up. Mom had already left for work, and Dad was in the stable. I was all alone with those two. It had been the last yogurt in the fridge, so I knew that Jessica expected me to just hand it over without any objections. But, stupid me, I didn't do that. Instead, I said with as much self-confidence as I could muster, "Of course, or else I wouldn't have gotten it out of the fridge, would I?" Don't you think you ought to switch to non-fat yogurt? Or better yet, start fasting?" Jessica pointed at my stomach. She pulled her mouth into a disgusted grin. "It looks like your riding pants are going to rip any minute. You're getting so big. Have you taken a look in the mirror lately? You may want to make sure your behind doesn't get too big for the saddle, you know." "I guess we know why none of the boys take any notice of you." For a moment I thought Katelyn looked uncomfortable, as if she disliked what Jessica was saying. But it must have been only wishful thinking on my part, because the next moment she giggled and said, "Did you know the boys in your class call you Kelly Belly?" I threw the yogurt on the kitchen table and ran out, with their mocking laughter ringing in my ears. Was it true what they were saying? Did the boys really call me that? No, it was probably something they just made up. But what if it was true? "Oh, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard," fumed Erica after I told her about it. "I don't believe for a second that the boys in your class call you any such thing, because you're not fat at all. And of course your riding pants are getting tighter. You're still growing, aren't you? So you need bigger clothes once in a while. I just had to switch to a bigger pant size myself. Does that make me fat?" "No, of course not," I said, "but—" "No buts about it," said Erica firmly. "You're just right. Not too skinny and not fat. And even if you were a little overweight, which you're not, so what? It's not illegal, is it? People should be able to be as they are, without being teased and bullied. Honestly, sometimes I'd like to wring your sister's neck. What's her problem, anyway?" "I have no idea," I said, relieved to notice that the lump in my throat was going away. Erica was right. When it came right down to it, I knew perfectly well that what they said wasn't true. So why did I believe it? I should have just laughed at them. But it was always the same. I let them get to me, and I couldn't help being hurt by their words. When would I finally toughen up and learn how to brush off cruel remarks? Didn't seem as if it were ever going to happen. Happy had stood there, quiet and patient, while Erica and I were talking. But now he stomped irritably on the floor. "How about that wonderful brushing you started?" he seemed to say. "Are you going to just keep blabbering and totally neglect me for the rest of the day?" I smiled and put my arms around his neck. His thick coat felt good against my cheeks. At least Happy loved me just the way I was. I felt comforted by the thought that this was one thing Katelyn could never ruin for me. After all the fuss when I refused to let Jessica borrow Happy, Dad had assured me that nobody had the right to make me lend him to anyone if I didn't want to. He had a serious talk with Katelyn about it afterwards, and even though I didn't trust her anymore, I knew that Dad wouldn't promise something he couldn't keep. At least I'd been sure of that until yesterday, when Lisa accused him of some kind of broken promise. I wondered what it was he'd promised, and what had gone wrong. I couldn't imagine Dad breaking any promise deliberately. As I continued to brush Happy, with long, slow strokes just the way he liked it best, I envisioned Lisa's frightened face. Jessica could call her a nutcase all she wanted, but for some reason I was 100% sure that it wasn't Lisa's imagination that had frightened her. Something terrible had happened long ago, that much I'd gathered, and I was exceedingly curious to find out what it was. I gave a sigh that made Happy open his eyes and look at me curiously. "Relax. It's not you I'm sighing about," I said, stroking him across his soft muzzle. "There's something mysterious going on, but I don't have a clue what it is." "I was just about to ask you about that," said Erica. "Did you find out anything at all yesterday?" I shook my head. My dad wouldn't say a word. "Could you talk to Lisa, maybe?" Erica looked enthusiastically at me. "Well," I thought about it for a moment. "I don't know. I don't really know her that well. Maybe tomorrow. I should try my dad one more time first." "Sure," Erica nodded. "I think you should tell you what's going on. I mean, you go for rides in the woods a lot, right?" I nodded, unsure what she was getting at.